Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart. Like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Asterisk the scent of rain mixed with exhaust fumes drifted through the cracked window of the downtown coffee shop where Ella Morris sat, her fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup. The ceramic felt rough against her palms, a stark contrast to the polished marble surfaces of the office she'd fled from 20 minutes ago. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the scarred wooden table, but she couldn't bring herself to look at the screen. 2 years. 2 years of walking on eggshells around Nolan Vance, the man who commanded boardrooms like battlefields and left grown executives trembling in his wake. Everyone warned her about him during her first week as his assistant. Eats people alive, they whispered. Don't take it personally when he destroys you. But they were wrong about one thing. It was deeply, devastatingly personal. Ella's reflection wavered in the coffee shop window as pedestrians hurried past, umbrellas snapping open. Against the sudden downpour, she looked hollow, her brown eyes rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. The carefully applied concealer couldn't quite hide the shadows beneath her eyes, or the way her lips trembled every time she thought about this morning's board meeting. Next time, maybe you should pay attention before embarrassing both of us. His words echoed in her mind, sharp as broken glass. The way he'd said it so casually, so coldly, while 12 pairs of eyes watched her crumble. A single misplaced word in a contract summary.
Fight.
One mistake in 2 years of flawless service, and he'd wielded it like a blade. Her phone buzzed again. Then again, Ella finally glanced down. 7 missed calls from his private line. 12 text messages from his secretary asking where she was. The corporate machine couldn't function without its cogs, and she'd been the most essential one for. Longer than she cared to admit, the coffee shop door chimed, and Ella's blood turned to ice. She didn't need to look up to know who had found her. The conversations around her died to whispers as his presence filled the small space like smoke. Nolan Vance, CEO of Vance Industries, stood in the doorway of a rundown coffee shop, his $1,000 suit as out of place as a wolf among lambs. His dark eyes found hers across the room, and something flickered in them. Something that looked almost like relief. Ella. His voice cut through the ambient chatter as he approached her table. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his usually perfect tie sat slightly askew. We need to talk. Shh, she forced herself to meet his gaze, her heart hammering against her ribs. There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Vance. Don't. The word came out rougher than intended. Adhel T lanced around the coffee shop, acutely aware of the dozen pairs of eyes watching them. Not here. Ella stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're right. Not here. Not anywhere. She moved toward the door, but his hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her wrist. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm. The same traitorous reaction she'd been fighting for months. His skin was warm, his grip firm, but not painful, and for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Please, he said quietly, and the word sounded foreign in his mouth. Nolan Vance didn't beg, commanded, demanded, took what he wanted. But here he was, his walls cracking just enough to let that single word escape. Ella pulled free, her skin burning where he'd touched her. I already gave you my resignation letter. It's on your desk. His eyes darkened. I tore it up. Then I'll write another one. She pushed past him toward the door, her heart splintering with each step. And another one after that, until you finally understand that I'm done. The rain hit her face as soon as she stepped outside, cold droplets mixing with the tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, she heard the coffee shop door slam open, his footsteps pounding on the wet pavement. Ella, stop! She spun around, her composure finally cracking. Stop what? Stop caring about someone who treats me like I'm invisible. Stop hoping that maybe, just maybe, you'd see me as more than a convenient tool. Her voice broke on the last word. I can't do this anymore, Nolan. I can't keep breaking myself against your walls. He stood there in the rain, his perfect hair dripping, his expensive suit darkening with water. For the first time since she'd known him, Nolan Vance looked completely undone. You don't understand, he said, his voice barely audible over the rain. Then make me understand. The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. Because all I know is that I've spent 2 years watching you from the shadows, memorizing everything about you, and pretending it didn't destroy me every single day. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor she'd never seen before. He took a step toward her, then another, until they were close enough that she could see the rain clinging to his eyelashes, could smell the cedar and leather scent that had haunted her dreams. There are things you don't know about me, he said, quietly. Things that would change everything. Ella's breath caught. What are you talking about? Nolan's hand rose as if to touch her face, then fell back to his side. Meet me tonight. My penthouse. Midnight. His eyes burned into hers. If you want the truth, I'll give it to you. All of it. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the rain with her heart pounding and 1,000 questions racing through her mind. Ella stood before the glass elevator that would take her to the penthouse, her reflection multiplied infinitely in the polished surfaces surrounding her. The elevator required a special keycard, one that Nolan had left for her at the front desk, with nothing but her name written on the envelope in his precise handwriting. 11:58 p.m. Her hands shook as she swiped the card. The elevator doors opened with a soft whisper, revealing an interior lined with black marble and gold accents. As it ascended the 42 floors, Ella tried to calm her racing heart. She'd chosen a simple black dress, something professional yet elegant, though she wasn't sure why it mattered. The doors opened directly into his penthouse, and Ella's breath caught. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, lights twinkling like fallen stars. The space was minimalist, all clean lines and expensive materials, but something felt off. Different. You came. Nolan's voice emerged from the shadows near the windows. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. The casual clothes made him look younger, more vulnerable somehow. Shouldn't have. Ella stepped into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I should have gone home, packed my things, and never looked back. But you didn't. Turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. You said you'd tell me the truth. Ella hugged her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed despite being fully clothed. So talk. Nolan moved to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. His hands were steady, but Ella noticed the slight tension in his shoulders, the way he took just a beat too long before facing her again. What do you know about my father? He asked, offering her a glass. Ella accepted it, but didn't drink. Richard Vance. He built Vance Industries from the ground up. Died in a car accident when you were 25. He was murdered. The words hit the air like a physical blow. Ella's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Neither of them moved to clean it up. What? Nolan drained his glass in one swallow, made to look like an accident. A business rival wanted him gone, wanted to absorb our company. When the accident didn't bankrupt us, they came after me. He set down his empty glass with deliberate care. They're still coming after me. Ella's mind reeled. That's why you're so careful, so cold with everyone. Everyone I've ever cared about becomes a target. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. My college girlfriend. My best friend from childhood. My father's business partner, who was like an uncle to me. He looked directly at her. They're all dead, Ella. The room spun around her. She gripped the back of a chair for support. Who? Who's doing this? Marcus Blackwood. The name fell from his lips like poison. He runs half the underground operations in the city. Legitimate businesses are just his front. He wanted my father's shipping contracts, the access to international ports. When bribes and threats didn't work, he escalated. Ella sank into the chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Why are you telling me this? Nolan moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Because for 2 years I've watched you become the most important thing in my world, and I've been terrified every single day that he'd notice. Her heart stopped. Important to your work, you mean? No. He knelt beside her chair, his hand hovering inches from hers. Important to me, you Ella. Not your work, not your efficiency. Your tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. Then why did you push me away? Why did you make me feel invisible? Because invisible meant safe. His voice cracked. No one suspected how I felt about you. You'd stay alive. But today, when you resigned, when I thought you were walking out of my life forever, I realized I'd rather die protecting you than live without you. La reached out with trembling fingers to touch his face, and he leaned into her palm like a man dying of thirst. You're saying someone might kill me because of how you feel about me? Yes. The word was barely a breath. And you thought keeping me at arm's length would protect me? It was the only way I knew how. Ella stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city lights blurred through her tears. This is insane, Nolan. This is something out of a movie. I wish it were. He rose, following her, but maintaining distance. There's more. She whirled around more. Blackwood made me an offer last month. My life for yours. Nolan's jaw tightened. He knows. Somehow he figured out what you mean to me. The blood drained from Ella's face. What kind of offer? I disappear. Leave the country. Sign over my shares of the company to a shell corporation he controls, and never contact you again. In exchange, he leaves you alone. No. The word exploded from her. Absolutely not. Ella, you don't understand. I understand. Perfectly. She moved toward him, her fear transforming into fury. You were going to sacrifice yourself without even telling me, without giving me a choice. There is no choice. His composure finally cracked completely. I won't let him hurt you, and I won't let you throw away your life for me. They stared at each other across the charged space, both breathing hard. The tension between them had shifted, evolved from professional to personal to something raw and dangerous. There's something else you need to know, Nolan said quietly. Ella's heart clenched. What now? The reason I knew about Blackwood's offer. The reason I know so much about his operations. He met her eyes, and she saw the shame there. I've been working with the FBI for 3 years. I'm wearing a wire half the time. Everything I do, every move I make, it's all being recorded. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. You're an informant, a target who turned into an asset. They approached me after my father's death, offered protection in exchange for information. His laugh was bitter. Some protection, Ella. Sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. So everything between us, every conversation we've had, never recorded. I made sure of that. He moved closer again. But Ella, if they find out about you, if they realize you matter to me, they'll use you. Both sides will use you. She looked up at him, this man she thought she knew, and realized she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the cold CEO, not the ruthless businessman, but someone carrying the weight of impossible choices. What happens now? She whispered. Nolan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went white. What is it? He showed her the screen. A text from an unknown number. Pretty dress she's wearing tonight. Black suits her. Too bad she won't be wearing it much longer. Ella's blood turned to ice. She looked down at her black dress, then at the floor-to-ceiling windows that had seemed so beautiful moments ago. Now they felt like a fishbowl, exposing them to invisible eyes. They're watching us, she breathed. Nolan was already moving, grabbing her hand, pulling her away from the windows. We have to go now. Where? Somewhere safe, he led her toward. A hidden panel in the wall she hadn't noticed before. There's something I haven't told you about this building. As the panel slid open to reveal a hidden stairwell, Ella realized this night was far from over. The man she thought she loved might be the most dangerous person she'd ever known. The hidden stairwell led to a basement garage Ella never knew existed. Nolan's hand remained firmly clasped around hers as he led her past expensive cars to a nondescript black sedan tucked in the corner. Get in, he ordered, his voice sharp. With urgency, Ella slid into the passenger seat, her mind still reeling from everything she'd learned. How long have you known they were watching? Since the moment you stepped into the building? Nolan started the engine, his jaw set in grim determination. I have security cameras. I monitor myself. 3 black SUVs circled the block twice before. You arrived. The car shot up a hidden ramp that opened onto an alley behind the building. Nolan drove with practiced precision, taking seemingly random turns through the maze of downtown streets. Ella watched his profile in the dim light, noting the tension in his features. The way his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Where are we going? A place Blackwood doesn't know about. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. I hope. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the garage of what looked like an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. But as they walked, through a reinforced door, Ella gasped. The interior had been converted into a sophisticated safe house, complete with security monitors, communication equipment, and enough supplies to last weeks. Welcome to my insurance policy, Nolan said grimly. Ella spun around to face him. Ow! Long have you been planning this? Since the day you started working for me, and I realized you were going to be a problem? A problem. He moved to a bank of monitors, his fingers flying over keyboards as camera feeds filled the screens. You made me care about someone again. That made you a liability. The words stung, but Ella pushed past the hurt. So all of this, the safe house, the hidden stairwell, you built it because of me? I built it because of what you represent. He turned to face her, his eyes dark and unreadable. Hope, a future, something worth protecting. Before Ella could respond, one of the monitors flashed red. Nolan cursed under his breath. What is it? They found your apartment? Ella's stomach dropped as she watched grainy security footage of 3 men in dark clothing systematically destroying her small studio apartment. They weren't just searching, they were sending a message. My things, she whispered, can be replaced. Nolan's voice was steel. You can't be. Ella sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what her life had become in the span of a few hours. This is insane. Yesterday I was worried about typos in memos, and now I'm watching criminals tear apart my home. Yesterday, you were also in love with a man you thought was heartless. Nolan moved away from the monitors, his expression softer. At least now you know why. Their eyes met across the space, and the air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Despite everything, despite the danger and the lies and the fear, Ella felt that familiar pull toward him. I need some air, she said abruptly, moving toward what looked like a door to the outside. Don't. Nolan's command was sharp. That leads to the roof, but it's not secure. I feel like I'm suffocating in here, Ella. No, your world around. To face him, do you have any idea what this is like for me? Finding out that the man I've been in love with for 2 years has been living in constant danger, that people want to kill him, that they want to kill me now too? You think this is easy for me? Nolan's composure cracked. You think I wanted any of this? I'd give anything to be the boring CEO you thought I was? Would you? Ella challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been. Using the danger as an excuse to keep me at a distance? His eyes flashed. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe you liked having a reason not to get close to anyone. Maybe Marcus Blackwood is convenient for you. The words hung in the air like a slap. Nolan went very still, his expression closing off. Take that back. Make me. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, backing her against the wall. His hands braced on either side of her head, his body caging her in. They were close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips, could see the fury and hurt warring in his dark eyes. You don't know what you're talking about, he said quietly, dangerously. Then tell me I'm wrong. Ella lifted her chin, defiantly. Tell me you haven't been hiding behind the threats and the danger. Tell me that if Blackwood disappeared tomorrow, you'd actually let yourself love someone. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension between them was suffocating. Electric. Then Nolan's phone buzzed. He stepped back abruptly, his mask sliding back into place. We have company. Ella followed his gaze to the monitors. 3 black SUVs were pulling up outside the warehouse. How did they find us? She breathed. Nolan's face was grim as he moved. To a weapons cabinet? Only one way they could have. He pulled out 2 guns, checking the ammunition with practiced ease. Someone told them where to look.
Who?
He met her eyes, and she saw the answer there before he spoke. Someone on the inside. Someone I trusted. The sound of the main door being breached echoed through the building. Heavy footsteps thundered. On metal stairs, Nolan pressed a gun into Ella's hands. Do you know how to use this? Her hands shook as she gripped the weapon. I've never point and shoot. Don't hesitate. He moved toward the monitors, frantically typing. There's an emergency exit through the back. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. Ella, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. The footsteps were closer now, accompanied by voices calling out tactical positions. This way, Nolan whispered, leading her toward the back of the space. They made it halfway before the door exploded inward. Well. The voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an accent. The infamous Nolan Vance and his pretty little assistant. A man stepped through the smoke, flanked by armed guards. He was older than Ella had expected, probably in his 60s, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a killer. Blackwood, Nolan growled. Did you really think you could hide from me forever? Marcus. Blackwood smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I own half this city. I know about every safe house, every bolt hole, every secret you think you're keeping. How did you find us? Blackwood's smile widened. Ask your friend at the FBI. Agent Sarah Chen sends her regards. Ella felt Nolan go rigid beside her. Agent Chen was his handler, the one person he'd trusted completely. That's impossible, is it? Did you really think the Bureau wouldn't eventually realize how valuable you could be to me? How much I'd pay for someone with your access to information? Blackwood's laugh was cold. Agent Chen has been feeding me intelligence for months. Your safe house locations, your meeting times, your pathetic attempts to protect this girl. Nolan raised his gun, but 3 red laser dots immediately appeared on his chest. Now, Blackwood chided. Let's not do anything hasty. I didn't come here to kill you, Nolan. I came here to make a trade. What kind of trade? Eyes shifted to Ella, and she felt ice water flood her veins. The girl's life for your complete cooperation. You do exactly what I say when I say it, and she lives. Continue to be difficult. And well. ... double quotes. He shrugged. I'm sure you can imagine. Nolan's gun never wavered. And if I refuse? You both die tonight, and I find someone else to run your company. Blackwood checked his expensive watch. You have 30 seconds to decide. Ella looked at Nolan, saw the defeat in his eyes, and realized he was going to agree. He was going to sacrifice everything to keep her alive. She couldn't let that happen. Without warning, she lunged forward, knocking over a bank of monitors. Sparks flew as equipment crashed to the floor, and the red emergency lights flickered. In the confusion, she heard Nolan shout her name, heard gunfire, felt strong hands grab her arms. When the sparks cleared, she was being held by 2 of Blackwood's men. Nolan was on his knees, blood seeping through his white shirt, touching. Blackwood said dryly, but ultimately pointless, take them both. The abandoned steel mill reeked of rust and decay. Ella's wrists burned from the zip ties binding them behind her back. Her shoulder ached where one of Blackwood's men had roughly shoved her into the chair. Across from her, Nolan sat motionless. His white shirt now stained dark with blood from the gunshot wound in his shoulder. Nolan, she whispered. His eyes opened, focusing on her with effort. Are you hurt? I'm fine. It was a lie. She was terrified, but seeing him bleeding because of her reckless action made everything else seem insignificant. How touching. Marcus Blackwood emerged from the shadows, flanked by the woman Ella now realized had orchestrated their capture. Agent Sarah Chen looked nothing like the dedicated FBI agent Nolan had described. Her dark suit was expensive, her smile cold and calculating. You son of a bitch, Nolan snarled, trying to rise from his chair. Chen pressed a gun to his temple, forcing him back down. Language, Nolan. We have a lady present. Ella stared at the federal agent she'd heard Nolan speak to on the phone dozens of times, the woman he'd trusted with his life. How long? How long what, dear? How long have you been working for him? Chen laughed. I never worked for the FBI. My credentials, my badge, my entire identity was crafted by Marcus 3 years ago. The real Agent Chen died in a car accident in Seattle, simply took her place. The betrayal hit Nolan like a physical blow. Ella could see it in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged despite the pain. Everything he'd done, every risk he'd taken, every piece of information he'd gathered had been for nothing. The recordings, he said quietly. Oh, those were real, Chen confirmed. Some of my best work. Marcus has been using your intelligence to stay one step ahead of actual federal investigations for years. You've been quite helpful. Blackwood moved. Closer, his hands clasped behind his back like a professor giving a lecture. Did you really think you could bring down an operation that took me 30 years to build? You're impressive, Nolan, but you're not that impressive. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted, your complete submission. Blackwood gestured to Chen, who produced a thick legal document. Transfer of all your assets to holding, companies I control, your signature on confessions to crimes I've committed, and your word that you'll disappear forever. And if I refuse? Blackwood nodded to Chen, who moved behind Ella's chair. Cold steel pressed against her neck. Then Miss Maurice pays the price for your stubbornness. Nolan's eyes blazed with fury, but Ella could see the defeat creeping in. He was going to sign. He was going to give Blackwood everything to save her life. There's another option, Chen said casually. One Marcus hasn't mentioned yet. Both Ella and Nolan looked at her sharply. Blackwood frowned. What are you talking about, Sarah? Chen's smile was arctic. Well, I've been thinking. Nolan has been quite the thorn in our side. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending to be a federal agent. It's exhausting keeping up the facade. She moved. Away from Ella, her gun now pointed at Blackwood. But you know what would be easier? Running the operation myself? The warehouse went deadly quiet. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Sarah. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's been making mistakes. Getting sloppy, emotional. She glanced at Ella. Letting your obsession with destroying Nolan cloud your judgment. I built this empire. I've been running it for the last 2 years while you played games. Chun's voice was ice. Shipping contracts, the money laundering, the political connections, my work, my contacts, my blood, sweat, and tears. Ella watched in horror as the situation spiraled completely. Out of control, Blackwood's men looked confused, unsure which of their bosses to obey. Chen had her gun trained on Blackwood, but 2 other weapons were pointed at her. You're outnumbered, Blackwood said quietly. Am I? Chen smiled. Tommy, Marcus thinks you're weak. He told me last week that you were past your prime. And Jake? He's been skimming from the accounts for months. He knows you know. Ella saw the shift in the men's faces, the way their loyalty wavered. In a world built on fear and betrayal, trust was a luxury no one could afford. This is insane, Nolan said. You're all insane. Maybe, Chen agreed. But insane pays better than sanity. She looked at Blackwood. I'm taking over Marcus. The question is whether you walk away quietly or leave in a body bag. Over my dead body if you insist. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse like thunder. But it wasn't Chen who fired. Nolan had somehow freed himself from his restraints and tackled one of the guards, wrestling the gun away despite his wounded shoulder. In the chaos that followed, Ella threw herself sideways, her chair clattering, to the ground as more shots rang out. When the noise stopped, Blackwood was on the ground, clutching his leg. Chen was backed against a wall, her gun pointed at Ella. Well played, she said to Nolan, but not quite good enough. Let her go, Sarah. This is between us. No, I don't think so. Chen's finger tightened on the trigger. See, I realized something tonight. You're never going to stop. Even if I kill Marcus, even if I take over everything, you'll keep coming. You'll never let this go. You're right. Chen blinked, surprised by his honesty. I'll never stop, Nolan continued, moving slowly closer. Not until every last one of you pays for what you did to my father. Not until you're all dead or in prison. Not until I've destroyed everything you've built. Then you've just signed her death warrant. Actually, Ella said quietly, I think I signed my own. Chen spun toward her, confused, just as Ella kicked out with both legs, sending her chair sliding across the slick warehouse floor directly into Chen's knees. The gun went off, the bullet going wide, and Nolan was on Chen in an instant. The fight was brutal and brief. Chen was skilled, but Nolan fought with the desperation of a man who had everything to lose. When it was over, she lay unconscious on the concrete floor. Blackwood was trying to crawl toward a dropped weapon, but Ella kicked it away from his reaching fingers. "It's over," Nolan said, breathing hard. Ella looked around the warehouse at the chaos they'd survived, at the blood and the bodies and the man she loved standing in the middle of it all, like some avenging angel. "Is it?" she asked. "Over." Nolan met her eyes, and she saw something there that made her blood run cold. Not relief, not victory, but a darkness that hadn't been there before. "No," he said quietly. "It's not over. It's just beginning." Before she could ask what he meant, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer.
Ow.
Red and blue lights flickered through the broken windows of the warehouse. "How did they?" Ella started. Nolan held up a small device she hadn't seen him activate. Emergency beacon. Real FBI this time. As law enforcement flooded the warehouse, separating them for questioning, Ella caught one last glimpse of Nolan's face. The man who had held her in the rain, who had confessed his love, who had risked everything to protect her, was gone. In his place stood someone she didn't recognize. Someone whose smile was sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Someone who looked exactly like Marcus Blackwood. 3 months later, Ella sat in a different coffee shop in a different city, watching rain streak down the windows. The FBI had relocated her after the warehouse incident, given her a new identity, a new life. Sarah Chen was in federal prison, awaiting trial. Marcus Blackwood had died from his injuries before making it to the hospital, and Nolan Vance had simply vanished. The official story was that he was in witness protection, helping federal prosecutors build cases against what remained of Blackwood's organization. But Ella knew better. She'd seen that look in his eyes, that transformation from protector to predator. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Are you safe?" Her hands trembled as she typed back. "Where are you?" "Everywhere, nowhere. Does it matter?" "It matters to me." A long pause, then look up. Ella's heart stopped. Across the street, barely visible through the rain, a familiar figure stood in the shadows. Even at this distance, she could feel the weight of his gaze. She grabbed her coat and ran. By the time she crossed the street, he was gone. Sedan waited at the curb, its back door open. Against every instinct screaming at her to run the other way, Ella got in. Nolan sat in the far corner, and she barely recognized him. His dark hair was longer, his face harder. He wore an expensive suit that somehow looked more dangerous than armor. When he looked at her, his eyes held depths she'd never seen before. "You look good," he said quietly. "Safe. I was safe." Her voice came out rougher than intended, "until you texted me. I had to see you." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if memorizing it. "Because I wanted you to know the truth. All of it." Ella's chest tightened. "I think I've had enough truth for one lifetime." "You haven't heard this part yet?" Nolan leaned forward slightly. "My father wasn't murdered by Marcus Blackwood." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "He was murdered. But not by Blackwood." His smile was sharp, empty. "He was murdered by his own son." The world tilted around her. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Richard Vance was a monster, Ella. He built his empire on the backs of people like Blackwood's victims. He trafficked drugs, weapons, people. When I found out, when I confronted him, he laughed, said I was weak, said I'd never have the stomach to do what needed to be done. Ella pressed herself against the far door of the car. "You're lying." "Tampered with his brakes?" "Made it look like an accident." Nolan's voice was completely calm, as if he were discussing the weather. "And then I spent 3 years systematically destroying everyone who worked with him. Blackwood was just the last. One on the list. The FBI never existed. There is no federal investigation." Sarah Chen was exactly what she claimed to be, a criminal. But she was also useful. His eyes glittered in the dim light of the car. See, I needed someone inside Blackwood's organization. Someone who could feed him false information, make him paranoid, turn his own people against him. Ella felt sick. You used me, no? For the first time, his mask slipped, and she saw a flash of the man she'd fallen in love with. That was never supposed to happen. You were supposed to be background. Noise, invisible, safe. But you made me feel things I'd forgotten I was capable of feeling, and that's why you're telling me this, because you care about me. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know who you fell in love with. Nolan reached into his jacket, and Ella tensed, but he only pulled out a thick envelope. There's enough money in here to disappear completely. New identity, new life, anywhere in the world you want to go. Why? Because I'm not done yet. There are still people on my father's list, still people who need to pay. He leaned back, and she saw the full extent of what he'd become. Where I'm going, I can't take you with me. Ella stared at the envelope, then at him. What if I don't want to run? What if I want to stay and help you? Help me what? Become a murderer? Help you heal? Something flickered in his eyes, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. There's nothing left to heal, Ella. I burned it all out of myself when I killed my father. I don't believe that. Then you're more naive than I thought. His voice turned cold again. Take the money. Disappear. Forget you ever knew Nolan Vance. The car pulled over. Outside, Ella could see they were back where they'd started, in front of the coffee shop where she'd been sitting when this all began again. And if I refuse, Nolan's smile was heartbreaking in its emptiness. Then you'll become another regret I have to carry, and I already have too many of those. Ella took the envelope with numb fingers. This is really goodbye. This is really goodbye. She opened the car door, but turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I think your father was wrong. Not weak, you're broken, and there's a difference. Is there? She stepped out into the rain. Broken things can be fixed. Weak things just stay weak forever. The car pulled away, taking Nolan Vance out of her life for the second and final time. Ella stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking through her coat, the envelope heavy in her hands. Inside the coffee shop, she found a corner table and opened the envelope. Along with more money than she'd ever seen in her life, there was a single sheet of paper. His handwriting, precise as always. You were the only good thing in my world. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be worthy of it. Live well, Ella Morris. Live better than I could. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her purse next. To the money she would never spend, and ordered a cup of coffee she wouldn't drink. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean for another day. But some stains, Ella knew, could never be washed away. Some choices echoed forever, and some loves were too dangerous to survive. She had learned to live with the first two. The third nearly destroyed her. But nearly wasn't the same as completely, and in the end, that made all the difference. The end.